Hello, welcome to today's video. My name's Leighton. This one's called a Wild Venison Pho. And when you think of pho, you think of beef, not venison. But last week, I made an experimental blend of venison pho. Wow, that is nuts. Oh my god. What I pulled off was one of the most incredible tasting broths I've ever achieved in my entire career. And I do this every day. I cook for a living. I do it for real paying customers at my store. And I'm telling you now, I've never pulled off a taste quite like the venison pho. And what makes this even more special is the venison is local produce to Queensland. It was caught up on the Sunshine Coast by a fellow subscriber on the channel, Luke Eldridge. And in this video, I can't wait to share with you the exact steps. And there's going to be a full recipe which you can follow at home to get the exact same results I did. But before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button and head on over to my page at phoq.com.au/shop. and grab yourself a packet of LSP or Leighton seasoning powder. You're gonna need it for today's recipe to get the exact same taste I did. I've never tasted venison, I've never worked with it, I don't have it on my menu. So before I began this blend, this experimental batch of pho, I wasn't sure what to expect. It could have gone two ways. Badly, it could have tasted okay, but I wasn't expecting the results that I got. It over-delivered, giving me a broth I've never been able to achieve. And I've done hundreds and hundreds of broths. I work with beef, chicken, pork every other day. It's vanilla to me. But a venison was like discovering chocolate because it opens up a whole new world of possibilities. And as a chef, it really excites me because in such a competitive environment where everyone's looking for that competitive edge, I found it in venison. So the backstory of how I got my hands on this venison is it started off with an email from Luke, who wanted to book a birthday dinner at my store. He wanted to pre-order the DB9, that very, very expensive bowl of pho. He came in that night and handed me a Woolies bag with some venison in it, which he had caught. So before we get into the actual cooking, there's a very important theory I need you to understand. This is really going to help you picture how we're going to get to our destination, which is to create a great tasting pho. It's called Leighton's 3 O's. It's a made up term. And what you got to remember is no one's ever come before me. No one's got a blueprint or a curriculum for me to follow. But I thought about this for a long time, and I feel this is a formula which really makes it simple to achieve a great tasting pho. So what it looks like is, if I took a piece of paper, I drew 3 O's on the page. The first stands for base, the second seasoning, and the third everything else. Everything else. And there's a reason why that's right up there in the corner, but we're going to come back to it in a moment. Now, how do you cook a great tasting pho? Well, if your base and your seasoning align, so if I took this pen, drew a line between them and they line up, you're guaranteed a great tasting pho every single time. Now, what does this even look like? Well, if you create your base correctly and you season it with the right amount of salt, sugar, LSP, fish sauce and boosters, You're guaranteed a great tasting pho regardless of this third circle, everything else, which is represented by the charred onion and ginger and spices. This is the number one reason why people fuck up cooking a pho. They're too preoccupied by this third circle. They're worried about the fennel seed and the coriander seeds and the star anise and the tea bags, when really they should be focused on the base and the seasoning. Okay, so if I joined everything else with the base and the seasoning, it would look like this. You gotta understand, it really doesn't matter where this third circle is. It could be up here with a lot of spices, a lot of aromatics, or that circle could be down here with very little spices, very little onion and ginger. It really has little bearing on the taste of your pho, so long as your base and your seasoning align. Okay, so I want you to understand this concept and remember it as you're cooking a pho or any other Vietnamese soup for that matter. Now, to illustrate this point even more, a base is a lot like building a house. Okay? You don't just throw in the frame and the roofing until your foundation is solid. The same applies when you're cooking a pho. Your base needs to be rock solid, but instead of Rio bars and concrete in the water cooking, we substitute that with bones, water, heat and time to produce a strong, solid base. Now on this channel, I preach 1-to-1. So if you've got a kilo of bones that you want to create a base with, we're aiming to produce 1 liter or 1,000 mils, 1-to-1. Very simple concept. And the stronger the base is, something really interesting happens. The chances of you getting that taste right increases dramatically. So instead of buying 1 raffle ticket out of 100, it's like buying 95 raffle tickets out of 100. Your probability of winning increases so much when you go 1-to-1. Now, going over the base, we need to create it using the venison bones. But the constraint is there's very little of it. It's only 900-ish grams. And the first thing you need to think of is 1-to-1, which means I'm going to create 900 mils of base. And the venison bones is a lot different to beef bones, which I'm used to. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Gave it a quick wash, placed it on a baking tray. I put it in the oven to caramelize it. Now what this does is it makes the broth or base more fragrant, and it helps with the collagen transfer to the liquid base that we're trying to create. In other words, you get better results if you roast your bones. Next, I transferred it into a pot, added 2 liters of water, which is enough to cover the bones. Simmered it for 6 hours on low heat. I started this at lunchtime on Saturday, and by the time I came in for dinner service that night, it was ready. Strained it, only to find out the volume was still off. So what I did, transferred it to a smaller pot and reduced it until I got about 800 mils of base. That night, my staff were rather curious to know what I was cooking because they've never seen this before. They knew it was different. Okay, so I told them, go have a smell, and the reaction was, it smells like creamy mushroom sauce that you get on a steak. That's how different it was. The broth chilled overnight, came in the next day and had my first taste of venison broth. First time in my life. Pinch of salt. Bring it up. It's mellow, nutty, and a creamy finish. And I knew the moment I tasted it, this was a winner. The next problem I had was I only had 800 mils to work with, but a standard serving is 500 mils, which means I was going to have 300 mils left over. This is when I decided to make two different versions of a venison broth. One was going to be a 100% one-to-one venison broth using the 500 mils. The other was going to be a blend of 60% venison, 40% beef. And I use my 24-hour bone broth base, which looks like this, ultra concentrated. I added in 200 mils to take the volume up to 500 mils. Now this is when we blend the base into a pho using seasoning. This is a concept that I teach on this channel. I call it the blend method. And when it comes to the actual blending, it is so simple and it looks like this. On the money. Added in salt, LSP, rock sugar, and fish sauce. That's it. That's all it was. Now I repeated the exact same steps using the blend. Exact same seasoning. The results were different. This one was much stronger. I found the beef bone base really elevates the taste of the venison. This one's a much bolder, stronger taste. Whilst the 100% venison, it's a more subtle taste. Yeah, there's a massive difference between the two. Massive difference. Oh, it's tough. But being so delicate, this is when I decided not to add any charred onion or ginger. I skipped it altogether. Spice wise, all I added was 2 pieces of star anise and a tiny piece of cinnamon. That is it. You see, I wanted to retain the taste of the venison without having it overpowered by the aromatics and the spices, which is what a lot of people get wrong. They have this idea where a pho needs to be massacred with spice, and you end up with this bowl which just tastes like a chai tea. When it came to assembling the bowl, the tenderloin was only 200 grams worth. It is tiny. Okay, it is 20 times smaller than this Black Angus beef tenderloin. Okay, we had 200 grams, which is perfect for 2 bowls at 100 grams each. One of the bowls, we sliced the tenderloin very thinly to mimic the pho thai, and the other, we decided to tenderize it, or bum as I call it in Vietnamese. Assembled the bowl, and when it came to the garnish, I decided not to put on the usual stores garnish mix of spring onion, sawtooth coriander, and coriander. And I chose to go with spring onions only, as to again not overpower the taste of the venison.
Thấy nó ngọt thôi.
Nó ngọt, nó thanh vị
Yeah, nó thanh. của nó thơm thịt nai hơn.
Yeah, thơm.
Tại nó không như bò hả?
Nó ăn khác.
Không có mùi bò chút nào hết. Và cái này không có bị tanh hoặc cái mùi gây mì của thịt nai. Surprise. Không có.
Ăn cái này giống đúng là follow theo phong cách phở của miền Bắc của em luôn.
Ok, cái này có mùi bò liền.
Cái này là bò hắc liền luôn.
Vậy.
Nó mặn hơn không?
Đúng rồi, nó mặn hơn.
Nhưng mà cái mùi bò nó bị nặng hơn mùi nai. It's actually ngon. Mà mềm á, rất là mềm. Mềm nó tan trong miệng luôn. Không cần phải nhai nhiều.
Cái nước này ngon hả?
Dạ, cái nước này rất là
ngon.
Wow.
Em nghĩ là thịt nai nó mềm sẵn rồi. Còn đâu cái
bằm hay không bằm thiệt sự ra cũng giống nhau có cái vẫn có cái mùi đó.
Nó thơm.
Nó có cái vị rất là lạ mà nó không có bị hăng, bị khô,
không bị nồng quá.
thấy rất là êm,
rất là dễ ăn.
và biết là không phải là bò. Tụi tên Ben ở quá gì?
Không sao. Ngon. Ngon.
Rồi nhả cục xương gum ra cái này. Bình tĩnh, người ta vô đây người ta ăn xương gum nữa. Cho nói chứ một câu được không? Em mới 17 tuổi thôi. Mẹ em có mình em là con à. Em là đứa con lớn nhất trong gia đình nên là bị gì thì mọi người nhớ gửi tin nhắn cho mẹ em, kêu em nhớ bả nhiều lắm. Phở này như nó giống phở ngoài miền Bắc ở Việt Nam mình á.
Chuẩn. Exactly.
Cái mùi nai hơi nồng nhưng mà cái thịt thì nó mềm. Được. Mà sao nó nồng quá vậy?
Rồi.
Cái bát này á, cái vị nó gọi là nó sẽ nồng mùi nai hơn cái bát này. Tôi không biết làm reviewer guys ơi, tôi chỉ biết ăn nè.
Em thích cái nào?
Tổ thứ hai, giá này là 9/10.
This now brings us to the most important part of the entire tutorial, where I run through my settings. If this was a Photoshop tutorial, this is the part where they show you adjustment layers and what LUT pack to use, color grading and all that to get that kind of look. Well, here I'm telling you my exact settings down to the gram of what I put into this batch to get this taste. Okay, so I usually write my recipes on a piece of paper or a piece of cardboard, but put onto an Excel sheet, it looks like this. And there's something called ratios, which it's very, very important for you to understand. So what it looks like is we've got 500 mils of base. I added in 3.4 grams of salt, converted to a ratio, it is 0.68%. Rock sugar 10 grams or 2%, LSP 2 grams or 0.4%, fish sauce 2.7 grams or 0.54%. So what does this even mean and how do you apply it to the real world? Well, you need to understand this when you decide to upscale your recipe. Say, for example, you want to cook 2 liters for your friends and loved ones. You would use these ratios as a reference point. So we're going to do a live example now. If you wanted to cook 2 liters worth and you don't know how much salt to put in, you take 2,000 times it by 0.68% divided by 100, which gives you 13.6 grams of salt. This is how much you should be putting in and so forth. So it takes a lot of the guesswork away, but you need to remember when you upscale, the higher you go, the more chances of the recipe not working out. I can't just make half a litre and go straight to 100 litres using these ratios and hope it's going to taste exactly the same, because it doesn't. There's a lot of tweaking to be done the higher you go. But the reason why I like to teach small batches or single servings in this case is your chances of getting the taste perfect are much higher. And once you've got that perfect taste, you've got a reference point in your head, which you then can use to feel your way up, and the sky's the limit. And one last thing you'll notice, I didn't use this extensively in this tutorial. This is a brix meter, which you've seen in the past, but lately I haven't been using it because I don't really need it. I did verify my recipe at the end, and it gave me a reading of 1.22% salt. Okay, so why is this significant? Well, if we refer back to my Excel sheet, if you take the salt and you add the fish sauce, 0.68 plus 0.54, what do you get? 1.2, an exact match with the brix meter, which means this recipe is legit. Just to round out today's video, venison, yes, it's possible to turn into a pho. It works exceptionally well, and the taste, tremendous. Took me to a place I've never been to before. And beef pho is bold, robust, and complex. Venison pho, on the other hand, reserved, mellow, subdued. And I absolutely loved it. And I guess the point of this video is to show that the possibilities are endless. And I know there's a huge fan base over in the States and in Canada where you have access or more access to venison and elk and all sorts of exotic animals. So over the course of this channel's lifetime, I do intend on doing more experiments to see what animals work and what doesn't work with pho. At my stall, easily $50 a pop to sell this bowl. And it didn't take me very long. It took me 5 minutes to blend and a minute to assemble. At home, this is definitely worth a try. I don't know what your motivation is to cook better pho. Maybe you're a white boy and you're dating a Vietnamese girl named Trang, and her father doesn't like you very much. Put this on the dinner table and watch his demeanor change, so long as you follow a few golden rules. The first, Leighton's 3 O's. Create a solid 1-to-1 base, seasoned properly with LSP, available in 900 grams, 450 and 200 grams. And yes, that's an entire box full of LSP that I'm sending out tomorrow. My name's Leighton, I'm the mad scientist. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them below. I'll see you in my next video.